So thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. I see my job based on the first session this morning to try and bring a little bit of sunshine or brightness to the pharmaceutical industry in Canada. We've had somewhat of a mixed, one would say even negative impression about where the Canadian pharmaceutical industry sits. So let me start off by a question and ask you, compared to 5 years ago, do you believe Canada's ability to attract investment in the life sciences industry is 1, better, 2, the same, or 3, worse? There's a surprise. So let me try and refute the 57% and see by the end of the presentation if you're willing to move to the same or better. So moving to slide 1, basically Roche Canada, like many other large pharma companies, has quite an extensive footprint in Canada, and I think sometimes we fail to communicate that positively enough. Now, we, like any other companies, came here many, many years ago. Roche happened to be 1931, and we have 2 footprints, one in Mississauga and pharma, and the other diagnostics in Laval and Montreal. And really the uniqueness of our company is the combination of both the use of diagnostics and the use of biomarkers more to segment out the right patient in the right place to ensure they get the right treatment at the right time. And I think that's the foundation really of our innovation, and it will be the foundation of our innovation going forward. Now, there are probably 3 things that differentiate us as a pharma company. We are a major, major spender on research. We're in the top 5, we were top 3 last year, behind VW, Samsung, Intel, and Microsoft. And the interesting thing is I think VW probably will be allocating some of their funds to paying off fines in the next few years and may drop from the number 1 position. But the other interesting comment, maybe number 2, 3, and 4 are also moving into the healthcare space and will become competitors in the long run. But ultimately, we run 2 research divisions, and that's one of the reasons I think we have confidence in the future. The second thing is we really follow the science. And personalized medicine, and the approach of personalized medicine, I think, is the future for the industry. So no longer one size fits all in the primary care setting particularly, but I think we know that a certain percentage of patients do not receive effective treatments, and there's over 100,000 deaths from adverse reactions in the US alone. So if we can tailor those treatments to the right patient, it's an efficient and direct system, and I think will help somewhat justify the cost of many of these drugs because the efficiency will be there that's not been there in the past. And perhaps then, if we look at our investment footprint in Canada, from Xenon, the involvement with Genentech and Xenon in Vancouver, which is about a $700 million investment, it's about $100 million into Montreal Heart, and Montreal Heart is one of our key global sites in the Roche world for cardiovascular research. And much research done in Sunnybrook and also UHN, Princess Margaret Hospital. In fact, as a company, as an affiliate of Roche, we do about 3% of global sales, but we do about 12% of global research. Now that is an interesting statistic and somewhat is different from what we heard earlier. So do we need a new approach? Albert Einstein famously said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, and clearly we as an industry have tended to do that. We often say that the industry is changing, but in fact it's the healthcare system that's changing faster, and we need to evolve with it, or preferably ahead of it, so that we can shape our own destiny and not have our destiny shaped for us. So also understanding that there are finite resources, an aging population, increased patient engagement, as Dave Rennick so eloquently described this morning, are combining to make the perfect storm, and that's putting an unprecedented strain on healthcare system and resources, but it's not a challenge that's necessarily unique to Canada. Now, our CEO was very explicit about his thoughts about limiting access, and what he said about the UK recent action is it's a stupid cancer drug system. Now, this is an Austrian lawyer, so for him to say that in English is quite remarkable. To say it as strongly as he did is also very remarkable. He almost attacked the NHS for what they've done. They withdrew 2 of our leading medicines because they basically said they can't afford to pay for it. So where is the interest of the patient there? But I think what it does, it demonstrates there is increased pressure from payers. There's a need to align the reimbursement process, and we as an industry have to work in partnership. We can't bury our heads in the sand, and we cannot go alone with this. We have to find a way, probably equitable way halfway through, to make this work. And there's certainly a greater level of complexity with regulatory processes. I mean, there's multiple levels of review. We have a very complex system here in Canada, and we have to find or steer a way through that. And by doing that, we also need to find a way to reward innovation. So we believe, as a company, we're doing now what patients need next, and I think we're willing to work in partnerships to do that. And we need to work collaboratively to find solutions. I think one with the patient groups, they're becoming more active and they're wanting to work with us as an industry. We just held recently a patient focus group here in Canada, and I'm very impressed by the power and the intensity of these patient groups. We need to look at other industries, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, to build on the work that we do with healthcare, and we see some great examples from Google and Apple, identifying and monitoring patients almost on a 24/7 basis. And of course, although we don't like it, we have to work with the payers. We can't ignore the challenges they face. An aging population, of which Joe and I are certainly part of, and an increasingly strained healthcare system with limited budgets to pay for it. So, as I mentioned, doing now what patients need next. We do this as an industry, we go forward, and I believe Canada is still a great place to make investment. It's just complex, but we can make the investment. So, 2 questions. My first one is nothing to do with what I've just said, but as I'm chair of the ethics committee of the coming year, and ethics and integrity are very important as underlined by VW, with the implementation of transparency obligations in Europe, Australia and the US over the past few years, do you think it's time for Canadian pharmaceutical companies to begin similar disclosure of payments to Canadian healthcare practitioners? Yes, they should. Companies should be allowed to decide on their own, or no, transparency and disclosure do not serve a purpose in Canada. Well, I'm very pleased at the 70% reckoning. Yes, it is an expectation. I think we have been somewhat guilty over time of not always been willing to disclose, and I can tell you in the next few weeks you'll see an announcement from 10 major companies in Canada that we will certainly be more transparent and disclose what we're investing in key centres, not necessarily individual healthcare practitioners. So, in conclusion, my final question is based on what I've shared with you and my suggestions of what it will take to sustain investment in the life sciences industry. In 5 years, do you believe going forward we'll see an increase in investment, 2, it'll remain the same, or 3, we'll continue to see even less investment? Yes, then I think I was quite successful. Thank you very much. I nearly forgot this slide.